Perfect. All right. Good morning. Thanks. Awesome. Josh, you rock. Thanks for being here. We're excited to talk to an actual real live appraiser.
Yes, seriously.
So many questions, and we sent you some, and I know that some have come up since then. So I'm really just going to move and let the people ask you questions, because this is a super interesting topic to us. It feels kind of like trying to read Chinese sometimes. So right. It's awesome to have your perspective. So please, y'all go for it. And thanks again, Josh.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys having me in here. We have, we've worked together quite a bit. I mean, Doug, you've reached out and have gotten some assignments from you guys. Nate has reached out several times in assignments that he needed some help with, and I appreciate that on you guys' end. I mean, I know it's going to be a lot of question and answer. We'll give you a brief. I'm in a couple of appraising groups on Facebook, and I throw it out there to them like I'm meeting with the real estate agents, and they're all like, "Oh my gosh, good luck." But they're like, "Hey, here are a few things you might want to just tell them." So we'll go brief through it, because you might care, but you really might not. But they're like, you know what, let them know that as appraising, we have to have a certain education is required just to become an appraiser. You have to, at first, you become a trainee, you have to have 75 hours of qualifying education. And once you get that 75 hours, and you can become a trainee, you then have 3 different certifications or licenses you can go after: your standard licensed appraiser, then your certified appraiser, and then your certified general. So a licensed appraisal can't handle any federal transaction loans, but it's the easiest to get is licensed. It's 150 hours of qualified education, and then 1,000 hours under a supervisor. And that has to be at least 6 months of training under that supervisor before you can then go test to get your state license. Like I said, they can perform non-complex appraisals, 1 to 4 unit properties where the transaction value is less than $1 million. Complex appraisals of 1 to 4 where the value is less than $250,000, and non-residential 1 to 4 with the transaction value less than $250,000. That's licensed. Certified appraiser is what most are. That's 200 hours of qualifying education, which are appraisal courses that they have set up that we can either take in class or we can take online, statistics and like real estate law, and just different courses that we are required to take. 1,500 hours under a supervisor and at least 1 year under a supervisor. And with that, you can do pretty much all single or all residential transactions regarding complex or non-complex. And then the certified general, that's the big guy. He can do everything. 300 hours of qualifying education, 3,000 hours of traineeship under a mentor, and at least 18 months underneath the supervisor. And they can do it all. So, we can't just go get our appraiser license back. I know when my dad started back in the late 80s, you could literally just go get your license and become an appraiser and learn on the fly. And now it's a lot more regulated. For certified or certified general, you have to have either an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or they've got a list of courses, college courses that you could have completed if you go that route, which is the alternate route. For license, you have to at least have your high school diploma. You don't have to have the college degree. But as a licensed appraiser, you're limited in the appraisals that you can do. So most try to go ahead and get their certification. So that's a little bit about the education required to become an appraiser. And that's really all I've got for you on that side. I guess it's question and answer time now. You want me to start in on some of the ones you sent, or do you want to just open the floor up and go like that?
Well, I just want to first just preface it by saying I think it's awesome that, we have speakers from time to time, and they don't always say, hey, what questions do your people have? I want to be prepared, and I appreciate the thought that you put into it, Josh. That means a lot, because, and I'm sure especially over the last year or two, appraisals are kind of sticky sometimes because we're all doing the best we can to get people to win. And then we have to deal with, oh my God, how much are they going to have to make up? And we do everything we can to set expectations for, look, this is just the reality of the market right now. You have to be prepared for that. But there are, always extenuating circumstances that, and even when listing properties, which is, I think, where a lot of the questions come from, it's like, how do we account for these when we're trying to comp properties to list, or we're running comps for folks? So with that being said, I'll just, why don't you just go ahead and address some of the questions that were sent to you, and I'm sure more people will have other questions too.
One thing a lot of people don't realize in appraising is we're dealing in the past, whereas you guys with buying, selling, and listing properties, you're dealing in the present and in the future, right? You're trying to look at what the market is right now and what the market's going to be when this house sells. And we're limited in the fact that we are using comparables that sold in the past, right? So we're going off of figures that are past tense. And what we're having to do in the market that we're in now, in the market that we've been in the last year and a half, whereas we didn't have to do it so much before, is we're having to really look at time adjustments and figure out how we can make these sales that sold 6 months ago, 8 months ago, that are really similar to our subject property that we're appraising, how we can make them relevant to what is now. And you didn't have that so much from 2010 to 2016, 2017, because it wasn't such a fast moving market. We're making time adjustments, and we're having to really research sales that have happened over, 7 to 9 months ago, 4 to 6 months ago, and then 0 to 3 months ago. And we're seeing how the market we're appraising in has moved. And if it's at, a 6% increase, or if it's at a 12% increase, then we're taking those numbers and applying them into a time adjustment to try to get the number that you guys are looking for, but really a true number of what the value is of the home right now. A lot of times you guys will take and see, all right, well, we've got sales in this area and they're all in this, or we've got listings in this area all in this, so this house should be going to the same, but we're hamstrung by what's sold. We've got to use things that have sold, and lenders aren't thrilled with our comparables sale price being lower than the value we come in on a subject. They want to see, hey, it's going to sell for this number, and you're showing me 3 comparables and none of them sold for this number. You've got to be able to explain that to us. Unfortunately, some appraisers take the easier route and they don't put the work in to find that time adjustment, because it's difficult, and they're coming in at numbers that are reflective of sales that are 6 months old, and that may not be the market we're in now. So I mean, you guys know that 6 months ago the market was quite a bit different than it is now. A year ago, even more different, and we're allowed to use comps that are a year old. I mean, we're allowed to go 12 months back for sales. Obviously we try to use everything within 3 months, and we're still finding that we need to make adjustments on sales that have happened within the last 3 months, because in some areas we're still in a growing market and not catching up. Adjustments was a big one you had asked on, and how we come up to adjustments, how we find adjustments, and what things we adjust for. When we do appraisals for our, and I can only speak off of our company, but it's important that we know anything that has taken place in that house. I like to go with, you let me know what you've done within the last 15 years. It's important to get a good effective age of the house, right? I mean, the house may have been built in 1960, but if you've recently renovated, in 2010, you put in new flooring, and, 2015, you did new bathrooms and a new kitchen in 2018, then your house that was built in 1960, it may hold a 62-year, 61-year actual age, but the effective age might be 20 years. Might be 15 years, because you've updated it so recent. And that helps me put a condition on the house. There on the sales comparison grid, you've got a condition line item, and we rate it C1 through C6, C1 being brand new home is C1. Home that's been lived in at all, up to maybe 5 years, usually for us, is a C2. Really good, very good condition. C3 is your above average condition. C4 is your average. C5 is fair condition, and C6 is just the loan's not going through anyway. So it's just not happening.
Not today.
Yeah. So, but we like to know, and I always try to ask any agent that I speak with, hey, do you know what's been done to the property and how long ago has it been done? They like us to go 0 to 1 year, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 to 15 years in our breakdown. So that's what we want to know. Hey, have you changed out the flooring? Has the roof been changed out? New HVAC system, new ductwork. Have you done anything in the bathrooms and the kitchens? What have you done to the property? And that helps us generate our condition of the property, as well as the effective age. Our adjustments then are taken from the market, right? We look at sales that are similar. So we try to find obviously sales that have similar condition, but we don't always. So we may find two sales that have recently been updated and one that hasn't. And then we can see what the difference in sales price is between the two that have been recently updated and the one that hasn't. And that can establish a baseline for that condition adjustment. It's matched pairs is what we call it in appraising. And so we try to find properties as similar, and then we find the differences and see what the value is in those differences. And that's where we come up with our adjustments. Some of it with appraising with our firm. My dad's a general contractor, I am as well. We're allowed to use local builder knowledge. And we just know that in this area, a half bath gives you what we're adjusting for is $1,000 a fixture on the bathroom count. And so we basically know that, that's the number in our area that we're hitting on. If you've got a half bath more, you've got 2 extra fixtures, it's going to be a $2,000 adjustment.
What do you mean by fixtures specifically?
Toilet, vanity, shower. A typical bath has 3 fixtures. Now you're seeing a nice master bath with 4 and sometimes 5 fixtures in it.
So like if it's a double sink, is that like a
that's 2 fixtures.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, we've upped that to $1,500 in the last year. It's $1,500 a fixture now is what we're going with. So typically your traditional 3 bath to 3.5 bath adjustment for our firm would be $3,000 because of the extra 2 fixtures that you have in the 3.5 bath. We do in some markets adjust for things like a fence, right? If you've got a nice vinyl or a nice wood fence in the backyard, even a chain link fence in the backyard, and that's the norm in the market, and then the subject doesn't have one, then we can see and we can make a negative adjustment because the subject doesn't have a fence. All the other houses do have a fence, and we see that they're bringing $2,500 or $3,000 for that fence in the backyard, and so we'll make an adjustment there. Fireplace is another one. It's not huge in our market because they're not necessary. We don't have many days of sub-zero temperatures where you have to have one. You're fine. But we do see that a fireplace will bring some adjustment, and we're typically going on around a $2,500 adjustment for a fireplace. If you have a fireplace and the comps on it goes up, if you don't have a fireplace and the comps do, it goes down. So, the fireplace gives you value.
So question on that.
Yes.
I've heard differently. I don't, that I've heard, but
right.
So I've heard that a real fireplace can be a negative thing too.
We don't see it in the appraising. Typically a fireplace gives, whether it's a wood burning, whether it's a gas, whether it's whatever it is, it's going to give value. We've not seen where it's not been valued or where it's been given negative value. We've not found that in the appraising side of it. If we start to see that, then that's where that negative adjustment will come. But we always have made a positive adjustment.
So I heard it on the insurance side, but
that's possible, but that's not really in the sales side. We've not seen it reflected. Yeah, so. We've not seen it shy anybody away.
Okay.
What about a pool?
Yeah, a pool's one of those that is
I know, yeah.
Right. That's a in-ground pool is in the appraising industry sometimes a little bit of a fight. You'll get the portion of appraisers that say, hey, a pool's a detriment. It's a hazard. It's going to bring value down. But what we've seen is a pool actually adds value. People that are shopping for a home, if they see it has a pool, it typically adds value to that home to them. The ones that think it's a detriment, well, they just don't shop for the homes with the pools.
Right.
But we do find that a pool does bring value, but not nearly the value that homeowners think. A lot of homeowners think it's dollar for dollar value, and it's nowhere near dollar for dollar value. We've found that a lot of times about 50% is what it goes around, right? So if the cost of a pool going in is 20,000, you're going to get about 10 on the appraisal assignment for that. That's not a hard, fast rule, but that's what we've seen a lot of times. It's about that 50% mark. Similar, and that's what I tell a lot of homeowners, their big question when we appraise and we go and we meet them and inspect the houses is, how can I make my house more valuable? What can I do to get more money out of my house? And we always tell them, look, you can do a lot of things, right? You can upgrade your kitchen, you can upgrade your flooring, but you're never going to get dollar for dollar back out of it. What you put in, you can expect somewhere in the 50% range to get back out of that, because by the time it's appraised, there's depreciation you got to take into effect, and you got to take into effect what the other houses in your market have sold for. And it's not always going to reflect a dollar for dollar. If you put 15,000 in, you're going to increase your property value, but it's subjective, and each appraiser is different in how they view that, right? They may view the upgrade that you've done on your flooring as you're now just keeping up with the market, and there's not really going to be much of an increase that you would see. Whereas had you not done it, it would have been a decrease because your condition would have been a lower condition. But
and that's one of the things that I've told people before, like, it doesn't pay to be the best house on the block.
No.
Because a lot of people will put a lot of money into it right before they sell it and then not get to use it.
Exactly. And being the best house on the block, what are my comps now?
Right.
I'm still trying to comp out of your neighborhood because I want to locationally be similar. I want to be in your neighborhood if I can. And if you're the best on the block, all my comps are inferior, and you're not getting the number, you're just not. Now, if you're the best on the block and we realize that, we're going to try to go outside of the neighborhood and into a neighborhood that's got something similar if we can, right? We're going to try to find a house that has similar amenities, similar quality of work, similar, condition, if we can. But a lot of appraisers like to just stick right there in the neighborhood. It's easy. Driving for comps is easy, and they won't take the extra step to go try to find a property that is even that's on the same level or even superior to. What we like to do is try to find a superior comp, try to find a comp that's really, really similar. And then, if we can find one superior or two similar, that helps us out a lot. The superior comp usually sells at a higher number, and when we adjust up, it's going to match that. It's going to help match the number that we're looking to get for the subject, but you can't always find that. That's not always.
So back to the pool thing, because if you have a neighborhood where everybody's got a pool and you don't have one, then that's a minus. Right?
Yeah. If everybody's got a pool and you don't have one, you're going to. It all depends on the appraiser that you're dealing with. Okay?
That's why it's so hard.
As an appraiser, you have to know that everybody, and it's the norm to have a pool, right? And if you've not done your research in that neighborhood and you don't realize that's the norm, then you're not going to make that negative adjustment. If you've done your job as an appraiser and you've researched that neighborhood and you realize, hey, every house in here has a pool and this house doesn't, then this house is inferior and there should be a negative adjustment there. That's where you guys could be helpful to the appraiser and say, hey, look, I know this neighborhood. I know that every house in this neighborhood has an in-ground pool in the backyard.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
And I don't know if you were going to get to this later, if I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but when we're in a situation where, we want to dispute an appraisal, what's the best way, in your opinion, to present that information? Obviously, because it's always a little uncomfortable because you kind of feel like you're telling the appraiser, hey, you don't know what you're doing. But in some cases, you may have a fact pattern, or they may have just straight whiffed on a house that you may think would be a justifiable comp for the transaction.
Yeah, Brandon, that's happened to me. I'm not gonna lie. We're none perfect. We run our MLS search and we may hit criteria that we think, is justifiable, and it'll show every comp we need. And we may have missed some criteria that's left a comp out, right? Or there may be a comp that's not in the MLS that we've not seen, that we've just missed. So yeah, the best way, the only way, is to go through the lender, contact the lender and say, hey, look, I really feel like that, this appraiser has, mismeasured the house, the square footage is off, or this appraiser has not taken into effect all of the upgrades and updates that have gone on in this house, and they've got it at a condition rating of 4, and we think it could be a condition of 3 or 2. Or, hey, we've pulled these comps. We don't see that the appraiser has found these comps. We'd like to submit these comps for the appraiser to do a ROV, which, you know, we get, you know, the request to look at and change our opinion of value quite a bit. Most of the time, it's a homeowner that's unhappy with the value they get, and they'll shoot off a long list, and we have to go through and check off, hey, you know, this is why this is not, this is why this is not, but it's part of the job and we understand it. There have been times where we're going through and we've got a list of 6 comps that a real estate agent has provided through the lender, and we research each and every comp because we want our report to be the best it can be. You know, that's our work on the line, that's our name on the line. And so we'll go through each and every comp that you guys provide, and we'll either detail out why it wasn't, we'll detail out why it wasn't used, or we'll put it in the report, right? I mean, that's how we do it. You know, we tell you exactly why, you know, this comp wasn't used, okay? You know, the subject property is located waterfront on Topsail Island. This property is located waterfront on the mainland. There's a difference between the mainland and the island. That's why we chose not to use this property as a comparable. Or, you know what, in our search, these are the sales that showed up. This sale did not show up in our search. We've researched it. We found it to be a true and reliable comp. We're going to add it into the report as comp 4 or comp 5. And we've readjusted our value. Here's the new value. We missed that one. That has happened. That's happened a few times, not a ton, but it has happened a few. But yeah, we get those requests quite a bit, and we go through and we try to do the best we can to explain why. But to answer your question, the way to go about it is to go through the lender, not to go to the appraiser.
Right.
The appraiser, the client, our client is the lender 100% of the time in lending transactions. If we're appraising for a homeowner that just wants to know the value of their home, they're our client then. But when there's a lender, they're our client, and they're the only person we can speak to about value. We can't talk to the homeowner about value. We can't talk to the agents about value. The only person we can talk to about value is our client, and that's the lender. So
it's not even directly the lender, is it? Like that?
Well, if there's an AMC in the middle, we go through the AMC first. We were talking earlier that AMCs are a big thing, appraisal management companies, and they're an intermediary where lenders sign up on with these AMCs, and then the AMCs have a big pool of appraisers in different areas. Lenders shoot their loans over to the AMC. The AMCs find appraisers to do them. So we submit everything to an AMC first, and then the AMC will review it. Then it gets submitted to the lender for review after that. But we'll talk with the AMC first, and then in times, you know, there may be a direct communication with the lender as well. But in all pretense, the lender is our client. And that's really the only person with value we can discuss. So the correct way is to go through the lender, and then they'll issue that request of value change to us. We'll go through it. We'll get back with the lender, and then they'll get back with you. Just honestly speaking, though, I have had phone calls with agents. You know, hey man, you know, I know these comps are there. You know, I didn't see why didn't you use them? And in my opinion, that's not talking value necessarily. It's discussing the report, but it's not discussing value. So I don't mind having that conversation of, hey, you know, I didn't use these comps because X, Y, and Z. Or, you know, give me a couple of days to research it and I'll get back with you and I'll let you know why. That way I can give you a good answer. But, you know, it does happen, Brandon. We miss them sometimes. You know,
So can I kind of piggyback 2 questions onto that? And so Meredith and I are in the triangle. Obviously, you're at the coast. The markets are very similar, but they are different to a degree too. But I think the questions still apply regardless of where you are. The first one is, how often are you, and in your opinion, most of the people in your position, how often are people making calls to list agents to ask questions? Because I've never once received a call on a listing from an appraiser to ask questions. But I've been on the other side several times as a buyer agent where the you know, the listing agent has told me that the appraiser has called and asked questions. And when I hear that, I'm thinking, well, Jesus, this is not going in the direction I want to go to. And kind of the second question is, obviously it sounds like you kind of touched on this earlier. If you have a home in an HOA community, you try to stick to that for your comps as best as you can. If there's not enough recent sales in there to support it, or you're not in a very rural area, is there a certain distance that you try to stay within, like a 3 miles or something like that?
Yeah. First, to the first question that you had, we get a point of contact, and we don't always get both the buyers and listing agent on our engagement letter. And so a lot of times they direct us through the buying agent, right? The buyer, the borrower is in effect who the appraisal, you know, they're whose the name is under, and then their agent is on the form. So a lot of times we don't have any other information. There are times where when I call a buyer's agent, they say, hey, look, I'm not the guy to be talking to. Call the listing agent. They can give you better information. We do also rely heavily on the MLS sheet, right? I mean, we rely heavily on an MLS sheet. We look that thing over, we study that. We want to know everything we can on there, right? And we want it to be as accurate as possible. And we find that a lot of them are, but boy, we find that some of them are nowhere close. It's right. Like, what was this guy looking at when they filled out this MLS sheet?
Do y'all pull property disclosures and things like that, or are you just straight up looking at the MLS sheet?
Say that again.
Are you looking at like residential property disclosures or just the MLS information?
We'll pull the tax records. We'll pull the MLS sheets. We'll look at the documents attached in the MLS if you've attached any documents to that. CRS is another one we'll pull information through. And then we will also jump on realtor.com, see what they've got. But a lot of that stuff's all the same. And then obviously, if I ever have a sale, I call most of the time the agent and try to get any information I can from them. Look, tell me about the property. When I'm setting up my inspection or finding out if there's a lockbox on there, I always say, look, hey, tell me everything you can about the property. Is there anything unique with the property that I should know? Right? Does it have an underground? Does it have an underground LP tank? Does it have a whole house generator? Any revisions or updates on the property? Is there anything about this property that's going to make it stand out that I may not know just walking around doing my inspection? I want to know about it. So we take the steps that we can to find out as much as we can about the subject, as well as the comparables that we use through the resources that we have available. The second question, we do try to stay within a neighborhood if at all possible. Now, some lenders have a requirement that you use 2 from inside the neighborhood and 1 outside the neighborhood. I just had that happen and it blew my mind. I did an appraisal on, I can't remember the name of the neighborhood, but it's a new neighborhood towards Surf City just before the bridge.
Waterside.
What's that?
Waterside.
Yeah. I've got an appraisal in there, new construction, house is almost finished. Knock the appraisal out, use the house to the left of it, use the house to the right of it, and 1/4 of a mile down the road, all within 50 square foot, all new construction. Appraisal is great, number is great. Send it off, and they send back 2 months later. I did the appraisal in July, and they send back late September, hey, we need an additional comp from outside the neighborhood. And I said, why? Yeah, I said, why? It's 2 months later. I know the loan's gone through. But my second question is, why do you want one outside of the neighborhood? This is a new neighborhood. Everything around it is an older neighborhood. Yeah. But I think it was Turtle Cove or somewhere. I went and found a sale and put it in as comp 4 and adjusted it. And the percentages were pretty high on the adjustment there. But, on something like that, I'll do what they ask. My value didn't change. We do go outside of the neighborhood though. We will set, I like to be within a 3-mile radius, if at all possible. I'll start my search at 1 mile. I always start my search at 1 mile and see what comes up. And then I'll go to 3 and then I'll go to 5. And then, there's some areas around here, Chinkapin, down in Pender County, Berg, all those areas, Atkinson, I may have to set a 10 or a 15-mile radius There are times where I take the radius out completely and I search for that city or the surrounding cities. I have searched the county. Yeah.
So when you get really rural up here, sometimes I've done zip code. I mean, and the same could be true if you're in downtown Raleigh or Durham or Chapel Hill or something like that. Sometimes you can't go more than a quarter mile because a 4 block radius is a completely different area. So, okay, I'm glad to hear you say that because that kind of I like when people justify what I believe.
Yeah,
it sounds like I'm pretty right on that.
Yeah, you're on in that. You'd ask about time.
Yeah, so would you, if there is something like 270 days out in the same neighborhood, would you take that before going outside of the neighborhood for something?
Yeah, which way you go?
Right, so that's when you have to. So the question is, you know, if I have something in the same neighborhood that's sold for 270 days ago, or something outside of the neighborhood newer, which do I prefer? And that's when I start breaking down everything. Right, I'm gonna look at the bed count, the bath count, the square footage, the year built. And those things are going to help me determine if it's got a 2-car garage versus a 1-car, and that's going to determine that sale then, that comp then, right? I prefer to have the most recent because I feel like the most recent reflects the market that we have today, and I can adjust the other differences locationally. I mean, we know that some neighborhoods are viewed as superior to others. That there are. And so if that's the case, that might sway me, right? I mean, if we're looking at, my mind's going blank right now and I don't want to throw, if we're looking at landfall, summer house versus your regular Pecan Grove. Yeah. If you're looking at some of those more high-end neighborhoods, you're going to probably stay inside of there and use that 290-day versus going outside and using a more recent, because the adjustment percentages are going to get pretty high.
Because of amenities and stuff.
Exactly. But then it goes back to, we were talking about it earlier, we then look and we'll do our research and try to find our time adjustment, right? We'll look and say, all right, in the past 7 to 9 months, sales were here. In the past 4 to 6, they were here. 0 to 3, they're here. So our time adjustment is this percentage. And even though this sale happened 290 days ago, we're going to apply an 8% adjustment to that sale price to get it to where these are that are more recent.
So not to get too far in the weeds on that, but the time adjustment, are you taking that from, again, because that's very specific to area as well. So are you taking it by either the market for, you know, the county or
we try if we can to get our time adjustment to as specific of that area as possible. Because we know that they're all different, but in some cases you have to go broader. We like to go, if we're talking Hampstead, we like to just try to look at Hampstead first, right? What's been the time adjustment in Hampstead? And then if that's not showing, we'll go a little bit broader, right? Yeah, it's crazy. I did one, it was in Jacksonville, and one-time adjustment for one area it was the Dawson Cabin, that area, Southwest community, and it was I think it was around 17% is what the time adjustment was from a 12 month. So on a month by month, I think it related to right around 1.5%. But we took that, and then we did one in Piney Green area. In some of the, I think it was Montclair and some of the older, and it was nowhere near the same adjustment. It was right at even in that area. So we try to look at specific areas on the time adjustment and make that as specific as possible. But we know that the market we're in is still an increasing market, and we see that through the reports we run. And so we really try to account for that.
I have a question.
All right.
What if you have someone who pays, the house wasn't appraised and they paid cash for it? Now is that house worth?
The house is a comp now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The house is a comp.
What about sale only? Because I just had a sale only, and I was told by someone that an appraiser won't use that if I put it in MLS. But I don't see why not.
If it's an arm's length transaction that was between a buyer and a seller with no influence and no huge concessions or anything like that, it's a comp. Right. A sale that has happened is a sale that has happened, and it resets the market.
Nice.
You know, if
Yeah. People need.
we need as many comps in the MLS as we can get. I mean, we need to see what's out there and what's selling. And that's the only way we can do a good current value is to have good current comps.
So you want us putting our FSBOs in the MLS?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we want everything that we can in there. And a lot of times they'll put in there comp use only or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as long as it's an arm's length transaction, I've got one doing an appraisal for now, it's a non-arm's length. It shouldn't be a comp. It's a mother selling to a daughter, and you know, a considerable discount, and that should not be, and it should be notated or you know, left out completely. But anything that's arm's length, we want in the MLS so we can then take a look at and see if it's comparable or not.
So how many comparables in the neighborhood do you need to bring the value?
So, well, we're required to get 3, right? We're required to get 3, but the more the better, right? Because I want to use the best comparable possible. And so if you've got, you know, 10 sales in the neighborhood that you've put in the MLS, I can take those 10 and I can find the best 3, you know, in my opinion, and then I can get the best value, right? The closest locationally, the most similar in style, right? If you've got a story and a half, I want to use a story and a half. I don't want to use a 2-story or a 1-story. If you know, square footage wise, that's a big, I like to be within 50 square foot up or down of my subject. So, you know, closest to square foot is good for us. Year built, bed and bath count. Bed count, not as big of a deal. Bath count is more we adjust on that line. But bed count is certainly, if you've got a 5-bedroom and everything in there is 3, you know, we want to try to find another 5-bedroom if we can.
What about a 1-car versus 2-car? What's the value for that?
A lot. It differs from appraiser to appraiser, but for us, it's about a $7,500 adjustment from the 1 and 2-car.
So I've also been told, so far what you said is like it depends on appraiser, but I've also been told that even stuff like that the adjustment itself can be different if it's in a different, like Sneed's Ferry versus Hampstead. A garage in Hampstead might be, you know, 7,000.
There are different qualities of garages.
Yeah,
I mean, there just are. There some people have a nice finished garage, and you know, it's the garage doors are you know, the extra hardwares, and they really have a nice garage, and that might get a little more adjustment. We don't necessarily make a difference when we see a garage in the area as a garage, and the adjustment between you having this garage and not is about the same. I think we're going $7,500 for a half, $15,000 for the difference between having a garage and no garage, 2-car to 1-car, carport to garage. There's an adjustment that we have, and we just try to see what the market shows by taking sales. We try to find 1-car garage sales versus 2-car garage sales and just try to break those down in match pairs and see what the difference is. And then we try to have, you know, we try to update it regularly, a spreadsheet that shows our adjustments that we have for those differences. Every appraiser is going to come up with a different one. I think 2 out of 3 appraisals that we do get reviewed, and there are peer reviews, there are board reviews, state board reviews as well. So they're getting looked at. And so one of the jobs we do is we review our peers' works. They'll send them to us, and that's an appraisal we do, is reviewing their work. And I've seen appraisers not make garage adjustments. You know, every appraiser is different. I can't understand that. I can't see where that would not be
Super frustrating for us.
So because our answers, we don't know.
It's frustrating for us too, because we'd like to. It would be nice if we were all on the same level, but we can't put out there a stock standard adjustment for everything. And I guess that's part of the process. Is there is a little bit of appraiser opinion in it, but when we see stuff like that, it frustrates us. I'm not going to say it frustrates us as much as it does you, but it probably pretty close, because we feel like that's kind of a little bit of a black mark on who we are. And how can you tell me that there's not a warranted adjustment for, you know, a garage versus no? Or one that gets me is when they make no age adjustment. I mean, you got a 10-year-old property versus a 2-year-old property. There should be an age adjustment there, as well as a condition adjustment. There's a difference in the properties.
How do you make that adjustment?
We have found that in our market, we show it about $1,000 a year for age, but it's looking at the market. Now, that's age. We also look at the condition, right? You could have a 10-year-old property and a 2-year-old property, and the homeowners have gone and renovated and updated, and there's no condition adjustment there.
Right.
Or there can be a 2-year-old property and a 10-year-old property, and the 2-year-old property is practically new, good condition. The 10-year-old property, they've done nothing to it. And then you're going to look and you're going to say, okay, our condition adjustment based on average condition and this being a good condition, very good condition, is going to be 10,000 or 15,000, whatever we determine through extraction in the market and through paired sales that condition comes out with.
What about for items, and I get this all the time from clients, I just put a new roof on, I just got a new HVAC. Is that considered value or just typical upkeep of the home?
No. That, and we talked about this at the beginning before we started recording. All of those items are important for us as appraisers to know, right? That helps us narrow down the effective age of the home, right? The home may be 60 years old, but you put a new HVAC system in, you've put new flooring in, you've put new countertops, you've updated the bathrooms. Now the effective age of that home, instead of being 61 years, is 20 years or 15 years. The condition of that home has improved because you've done the normal upkeep, but you've gone above and beyond, and you've added, a new roof, new HVAC, new fixtures, lighting fixtures, whatever it may be. That's helped the condition of the property as well. So all of those things are things that, if the appraiser contacts you, let them know, give them that information. I've had some.
On a sheet on the kitchen table.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I was going to ask that actually.
I've had
Is that helpful or
yes, it is helpful.
I've never had an appraiser reach out and ask me for upgrades. I try to list them in MLS, assuming that it's looked at, but I have seen read agents say they will leave a sheet on the table.
I have had it numerous times where they've left a list on the table. I've had them call me and I'll just say, hey, you want to go over it right now? Let's just go over it right now. And I'm taking notes. We need to know that's the only way we can get a good grasp on what the property is, because when you walk through a property vacant with no one there with you, it looks like the roof might have been replaced recently, but I don't know. 5 years ago was pretty recent, but I don't know that.
So you prefer to have the listing agent at the property with you? Is that what you're saying?
Look, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't prefer it.
Would not want that.
Seriously. I don't mind it. You slow us down a little bit, but it's not terrible. I prefer a listing agent over a homeowner.
Just bringing coffee.
No, would it be better to compile a list of upgrades and email those to you once you've scheduled the appraisal appointment, or put a document on the MLS with what the updates are?
Yeah. That's if we can get that type of help, an email with a list of updates. Literally, I take a phone call and just, hey, Josh, this is what's going on this property. This is what we've done. And I'll jot notes down. It doesn't have to be so, it doesn't have to be so much, but if you're going to leave that list on the countertop, make sure the appraiser is aware of it, right? I've had, and I'm fine with this. There are appraisers who aren't, but I've had real estate agents say, hey, look, I've left you a folder on the countertop. I have pulled sales that I think are comparable in the area. I've listed the updates to the property, and I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? I want to see what you're thinking. I may, like I said, it goes back to the question you had earlier, Brandon, I may miss one, and I don't want to miss one. I may look at those comps or those sales that you've provided. I may say, not what I'm looking for at all, but at least it gives me what you're looking for. And I hopefully then don't miss it. So it's not a bad thing to provide a folder for the appraiser that says, hey, here's some things. Here are the updates on the property. Here's the amenities in the neighborhood. Because some of us in my profession are lazy and they don't want to put the work in. Right?
It's just like ours.
So if you've provided it for them, well, they don't have to put that extra work in, and it's right there for them. And there's no excuse for them to have missed it. I know that's an added step on you guys, but it might help. It might help in that situation where they've missed a comp and they're flipping through that folder and they say, hey, look, Brandon's provided me these 4 sales. Let me look at these and see. Right. And then they get to looking through them and will decide on their own. I have never taken a folder like that and just tossed it. I always go through it. Always, 100% of the time. If you guys have taken the time out to provide it to me, there's going to be something in there of value. Right. And I'm going to look through it every time. Do I always use those comps? No, I don't always use those comps, but I do use some of those comps quite a bit of the time.
John, I got a question for you. When you get documents for a transaction and you see an appraisal addendum, buyers are willing to make up a gap of X amount of dollars, or buyers are willing to bridge any gap necessary, right? We're doing a lot of that up here. That's just what you got to do to win. Does that change your approach at all as an appraiser?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, right? The property is going to be valued at what it's valued at. Right. And my job is to look at what it's valued at in the market, because the lender wants to know, if they default on this loan, what can I sell it for? Right. And it's not your typical buyer that's going to say, yeah, we'll put forward, 8, 10 to make the deal work. So we've got to go with what's it valued at for the lender, and give them a straight number of what the present value is, what they can sell it for if it were to default. So it doesn't change my approach to the appraisal. If a buyer is willing to make up a gap necessarily, I'm still going to look for the same comparables, the same style of comparable. I'm still going to work through my approach the same way. A
follow-up to that is, how much does a multiple offer situation play into it?
For us, it doesn't.
None.
For us, it doesn't. Matter of fact, a lot of times we don't even know. Right. A lot of times we don't even know that's the case. Rarely do we know that's the case.
Well, unless an agent communicates that to you, you have no way of knowing that.
Right, because lenders can't. Right, because lenders can't influence value. Right. That's a huge fine. I think it's $1 million fine for a lender if they influence value on an appraiser. So they can't give us any of that. They're going to stay as far away from that stuff. Right. When I first started in appraising, they would fax over their engagement letter, and they would have a line on there: the appraisal needs to come in at $250,000.
Oh, Lord. Can we do those?
No, I mean, I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. And then
that's part of why 2008 happened, people.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all come up with some rules about that. And so then in the few years following, we would get the same exact fax cover sheet with the same number, and they would take a Sharpie and just do a little line through it so it was marked out. So they would try to skirt the rules, but now it's pretty serious, and there's no. They give us very little as far as any of that to try. They don't want to be accused of trying to influence value at all, and that goes back to in all aspects. I saw an appraiser yesterday in one of the forums I was reading through. They went to an assignment, and the agent met them at the assignment with a folder of information. And the appraiser got back into their truck, and inside of the folder was an envelope with cash in it. And so he had to go track down the agent, give him the envelope, and take himself out of the assignment. Right? I mean, he had to just say, "Look, I can't do this anymore. They've tried to influence my opinion of value here, and I'm stepping away." And now everybody loses, right? Because now you've got to find a new appraiser.
Poor seller.
Right? Yeah. The seller is now because an agent tried to influence, but.
Damn.
That was actually me. I'm sorry about that.
It's like, I got the money back. But,
well, did you turn them in?
Oh,
yeah.
That's where I love that.
Yeah, so I was reading through that form, and because I was curious, I personally have never been approached with a stack of cash. So I wanted to see this protocol here. What do we do? And a lot of people said, let the lender know that it's happened. Some people said call the real estate commission and let them know that it's happened. Some people were on there saying, hey, take the money, put it on your Christmas tree, and tell your kid this is a gift from Santa. But most people were saying, listen, you know what, the right thing to do is to step away from the assignment, let them know the reason why. You don't have to go as far as turning them in, but I think the overwhelming majority in that forum said the right thing to do is probably to turn them in, and they need to know that that's completely out of the line. So
I got a question. I've heard from multiple agents, not in this firm, but in other firms in this area, say that there's a few appraisers, VA appraisers, that will not even do the appraisal and just call Tidewater. Is that even possible?
Yeah,
could they actually get away with that?
No. I don't think you could actually, what we've seen, and we've only been doing VA now for 2 months. Okay. So we're just getting our feet into VA. We've been very busy over the last several years, and we've not wanted to take that on. As appraisers, there's a conception that VA is just very difficult, hard to deal with, hard to work for. In the 2 months that we've been with them, we have loved them. They've been the easiest appraisals we've done. Well, yeah, possibly, but
in other words, I guess what I'm asking
if you don't hit the number, then you have to fill out a tidewater, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's the requirement.
So you don't call the agent first, you have to just go straight to.
Do you have to send anything to the lender?
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Is there any requirement for them to?
We've been told that we have to perform the appraisal. And if it then doesn't come in after we've submitted, then you take that next step of the tidewater.
So you have to submit something.
That's what we're under the understanding. Again, we're 2 months in with the VA.
Jeez.
So
I mean, prior to actually getting the comps from the agents.
we at that point we've done the full appraisal.
Okay.
And we have gone, we get our own comps again. We don't get the comps from the agents. We will ask for any if you have any, but we'll search for our own as well.
He's saying he submits
We have finished the
appraisal
assignment.
that doesn't make value, then calls
Yeah.
for title.
Why is there such misconception with VA? I understand that more things will get called like rotting wood and things like that. But as far as value, why is there misconception that VA appraisers never give value? You would think it would be the same as any other loan program.
It should be. I
Just,
can't answer that real well for you because the VA appraisers I know are really good appraisers. And I haven't seen it
who
happen.
don't want to take VA because of the values, like they're not making value.
And
Same
that's
with FHA.
just
Yeah.
because
They're
just because
they're
of the,
difficult.
I think, repercussions of it, where then, the buyer could get their
The
EMD back. But the thing is, in this market, it almost doesn't even matter anymore.
Right.
EMD is
You're
working
going into it, if you're using the VA,
Yeah.
you're
I guess
probably gonna pay over anyway.
I guess
so.
what I'm getting to is it's done the same way as conventional. And
We do the same appraisal for our VAs that we do for our conventionals. FHA takes a few more steps. We have to do a few more steps in an FHA appraisal than we do in a VA or a conventional. But in a VA, yeah, you've got to look for paint flaking off. Same with FHA. Tree stumps in, rotten wood. Another thing was a big one. Jennifer Parker had said, "Hey, make sure you tell them about this on VA. If it's in a community that has a offsite sewer system or septic, that has to be something that we know about ahead of time because that can take and add delays to the process if we find out."
same with like dirt roads and things like that.
I've not found it with dirt roads yet.
I had one kicked back and what they were money because it was on a dirt road.
Josh, I know that for VA,
Well,
you
without
have to have
yeah.
there has to be some sort of road agreement. If it's a private road, does that impact value versus when you're looking at comps?
I've never seen that impact value, Doug.
Okay.
I've never seen that impact value. Typically that's a property that when we look for comparables, it's going to be somewhat similar, rural.
They're going to have road issues too.
Typically, I've not seen it impact value. I guess it could. I can't speak on all appraisers, but I feel like sometimes we take a look at it as we're all in this together, right? And we're not gonna try to nitpick something to not make a deal. Let me change that. We're not gonna try to nitpick something to hamper the value of a property significantly. We're just not, right? If we see something and it's clear as day gonna affect value, we've got to call it out. But we're not going to go into an assignment looking for things to try to knock value.
Yeah, it's impartial.
It helps no one. And so, yeah, we're trying to take an unbiased, impartial approach at it. And if our comps that we're using are similar, it doesn't have to be the same, but similar, then we're not going to take a knock. And something like a road, unless it is just, horrible. I can't imagine an appraiser doing an adjustment because of that. It's possible that they throw that into the location adjustment, Doug. I mean, it is possible, but I wouldn't say it's typical.
How are you handling new construction homes where the last phase that just sold? I mean, these new neighborhoods, it's all the same floor plan. So it's very easy to pull comps where they're at X price. And now the builders just raised the price 50,000 because of material. How are you doing that?
It's hard to do that. One of the things that we've done, and we just had this on an appraisal 3 weeks ago with new construction. We're fortunate that we are also general contractors, and we actively bid.
Yeah.
You know, my dad's got 300 construction right now, so we know the pain in that, because it is extremely more expensive to build today than it was 6 months ago and even a year ago, as well as it's a longer time period too. It takes longer to build now because everything's backed up, right? It takes longer to get materials to put a house on than it did a year ago. So what we're looking at is we've seen that Marshall and Swift and the cost estimators that we use, Craftsman, they have done a good job keeping up with building cost in our area. And when we run a cost approach on a report, there's 3 values to approach in an appraisal. You've got the sales comparison, which most of you all know and see all the time. Then you've got a cost approach to value, which is your replacement cost new, is what we always run it as. And then the third approach is the income approach, which we rarely do in this area, but in some larger markets, the income approach is done as well. Then we use the cost approach, and we'll run it, and we'll see what they're coming up with as a cost per square foot current. Okay. And we'll take that and look at what it was 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And then we see a percentage of adjustment there. And we apply that adjustment into the sales comparison approach, because it does cost more now to build. It just does. So in a new construction, that's a great way to help make up that difference in between, hey, these are great comps they sold 3 months ago. I'm going to use all of them. I've got to make that adjustment.
Low wall $30,000 because of
right.
Yeah. So it's not just builders being greedy.
It's not just builders being greedy and horrible. They're really trying to make up costs they're losing, but builders are builders.
Yeah, and out the gate, we have to tell our clients this builder is not coming down on the price.
Right.
And you have to have that conversation and say, if this appraisal comes in low, the builder is not coming down. The price is the price.
Right. And remember, I did say earlier, there are appraisers that are lazy, and they're not going to take that extra step to find out what it costs now to build versus what it cost 3 months ago to build. And they're going to throw those 3 comps on there, and they're going to say, what, man, they're 3 months old. They're the exact same square footage. Y'all, I don't know why y'all agents are pricing it here, and that's their thing. And you hope to be able to, and you can go back, Brandon, when you're looking at your request to change value and you're talking to the lender and say, hey, this is new construction. It costs more to build now. Mm-hmm. If the appraiser will go back and just try to research and see what it cost to build 6 months ago versus now, the percentage increase is X. Will they? I don't know. If they're that lazy as an appraiser and they've not done it initially, they could easily just throw in a comment into the report that says the appraiser researched and shows no, evidence to support this. And how much is that lender going to really push it? I don't know the answer to that, but it'd be worth submitting that. Maybe at least then that appraiser is going to think about it on the next one. I don't know that they would.
Speaking of new construction, if you've got, let's say you've got most that are pending under contract, then you've got like a exact same floor plan that resold 2 years ago. Are you gonna pull that comp, or are you gonna just do the brand new construction comp? So if it's the exact same house, the exact same floor plan, and it sold.
So we have to use sold comps.
It's 2 years old. Yeah, exactly.
We have to use sold comps as comps 1 through 3 on our form, and those are the comps that help us determine value. We're allowed to use pending and active listings as comps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but they do not allow us to weight those in the opinion of value. They're there to help support value. Well, they're there to help support value. So if I've got comps 1, 2, and 3 that are 6 months old or a year old,
right?
You said 2 years. We're allowed to go back farther than 12 months if there are no comps in the area. We're allowed to do that. But if there are comps in the area, they want us to be within 6 months. That's a guideline. 12 years is a really strong guideline, or 12 years. 12 months is a really strong guideline. But we can go back 2 years. We can go back 3 years.
Jeez.
That typically happens on a property on 88 acres.
That's not really hard to
Atkinson
comp. Yeah.
with, you know, a horse barn, and that happens there more likely than in these neighborhoods. But back to your point, we can use comp 1, 2, and 3 that have all sold within the past 6 months or a year.
Right.
And then we can put the pendings in there. And when we make our adjustments to show building cost increase,
right.
time adjustment,
Right.
hopefully the number that we come up with when we adjust comps 1, 2, and 3 for our opinion of value is in line with what those pending sales are. The problem with a pending sale is it's a pending sale and it can fall through. And so we can't use them to adjust with because it did not actually happen yet, right?
So what if you get an appraisal that has a pending with under 1, 2, or 3? Like, what can we do as agents? Because I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that you shouldn't use pending.
The same thing I can
And
do
I
if you
called
guys
her
try to
out.
influence me, right? You can call the appraisal board. You can, again, you're not
so
talking
1, 2, and 3 were pending.
You're not talking value necessarily. You can call the appraiser and say, hey, I didn't think you'd use a pending sale in your 1, 2, and 3. Why, you know, can you explain to me why it's in here and why it's not comp 4, 5, or 6? If they put it as 1, 2, or 3, they may not know the answer or may not want to give you the answer. It doesn't sound like a very good appraiser.
It was right across the street. That's why she did it.
Yeah, right. And it should have been 4. I mean, it should have been comp 4. A pending, I love to put pendings in to try to justify what I come up with because it's showing what's currently happening in our market.
Right.
So I love to put them in.
You just don't know where it's going to
But right. And I have had.
So Josh, if you're using a pending, are you using the pending based on what the list price was in MLS, or is somebody providing you with the contract price?
Are you calling that agent and saying what's this going to close for?
I'm using the price that you've got on the MLS, Doug. That's what I'm using. I'm using the number that's on the MLS as a pending, unless I have spoke to the agent. I had one on the island.
She said it.
It was that's a whole different ball of wax, right? Everything out there.
Yeah. We were going to have a tough time on this one. It was oceanfront, and it was right when the market was really starting to go. And the agent called me and he said, listen, Josh, I know that you're doing this appraisal, and I have got one under contract, and it's closing Friday. Right. Well, my appraisal is as of the effective date of the report, the date I go inspect the report. So he's saying to me, this is closing Friday. And so I said to him, okay, well, then I'm going to inspect Monday. Right. If this closes Friday, then I can inspect Monday and I can use that as a comp. It doesn't have to be in the MLS, you know, but it has to be a closed sale. So I called him Monday morning. Hey, did everything go okay Friday? Yeah, everything went good Friday. All right, now I can inspect. Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Communication between.
That's what we want you to do. Right. We want you to do that.
But if we don't know, right? If we don't know these are closing when they're closing, then we don't know.
Well, I mean, we advise people all the time.
If we're like, oh, we really want to use this comp, it's closing here. Oh shit, this appraisal's scheduled for before this one closes. Can we call that appraiser and be like, can you wait 3 days and come back out?
I'm going through the exact thing right now with new construction where all the prices have gone up 50,000, and the builder's rep told me we have 2 closing on the 17th and they both appraised higher. I just told the lender, can you hold off on ordering the appraisal?
That works well. We have that, and then we have some lenders. That man, they send us out there 2 months, 3 months before the property's even finished. And I'm like, why am I
you got to
come back.
Got to come back and charge more.
Yeah.
But you're also, the value that I'm appraising it at
is not a house.
Isn't when it closes. But anyway, what I would say, if you know the appraiser at all, if you have any relationship with them, call them. Hey, look, because we set our schedules. I mean, we set our schedules in advance for when we're inspecting. And I try to go to one area and knock out 3 inspections in that area. Like if I'm doing Hampstead, I want to do 3 in Hampstead. Then if I'm going to Atkinson, I'm going to do Atkinson and Burgall and something else down that way. I'm going to make my trip worthwhile. If I'm going to Emerald Isle, I want to do 2 or 3 in that area. So reach out to the appraiser. And I can't speak for all of them. I can speak for us. I never mind a real estate agent calling me and saying, hey, this is what's going on. I just want you to be aware of it. And we've got these that are going to be great sales, but they're closing on this date. Any way you can work your schedule out where you're appraising it or inspecting it after that. So your effective date occurs after. So these are closed sales and you can use them. What appraiser wouldn't want to use the most recent best sales. Well, it makes our job easier.
Because by the time we get the appraisal report back, they're already closed. And we're like, why weren't these comps used?
Right. Yeah. And that's
so let me make a few comments here, because I've made a list of questions too that I'm going to rapid fire to you, Josh, because we've been doing this for an hour and I'm sure you've got something to do. So just like you would if you're pricing a property to list and you're waiting for something to close to get your seller comps, there's no reason you can't do the same thing with an appraiser or a lender, like Josh is saying. If you're anticipating or you're paying good enough attention, which you should, when something is going to close, then when you let the lender know, hey, we're under contract, hey, guess what? There are 2 others closing in this house on the 15th. Can we make sure that we schedule closing the appraisal for a day or 2 after that, so that the appraiser has access to that closed info in MLS? You have to be thoughtful on that. So if you're aware of it, that's great. If you don't do anything about it, then it doesn't matter. So make sure you're communicating to that. Remember, Josh is a person. These other appraisers, they're people. I know that our standard is up when we think about appraisers sometimes, but they're just people doing their jobs. If you communicate to them effectively in the right way, they're going to respond, 99% the right way. So make sure that you're being thoughtful and you're approaching it. Hey, you know how we talk about winning the other agent? Go win the appraiser. Okay. Go win the appraiser. All right.
Yeah. And on that, we want it in the MLS. A lot of times when we receive the assignment from the lender or the AMC, a lot of appraisers, within a couple of days of receiving that assignment, they're going to do their search on the MLS, right? So the quicker that stuff's in there, the closed sales, the better, because if it's in that time crunch, and you may then, in that situation, you may want to specifically reach out to the appraiser if you can, and just say, hey, look, I just wanted to make you aware there may be some new comps available. You may have done your search, a few days ago or a week ago when you received this assignment. I know your inspection set up for, later in the week, but I'm just letting you know there may be a couple of new comps. We know some that were closing, and just make them aware. I want to use the best comp available. And if it closed yesterday, it's a better comp than the one that closed last week, right? It's more recent. So, that's Doug's right. Reach out to them, right? I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? They're not going to do it, right? I mean,
that's been like the whole mentality. You don't want to poke a bear or whatever. Yeah. So don't call them and piss them off. And
I've never had an appraiser reach out to me as a list agent. Never. Not once. That's sad.
Yeah. Well, this is the way you need to look at it. You're making their job easier if you're giving them more information. So take that approach. And it's just like when you call a lead and you start in real estate, you're like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody. Well, you're not bothering them. They signed up on your website. Or you're not bothering the appraiser. You're helping make their job easier. So reach out, introduce yourself, be your nice, polite self or whatever, and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you saw this one because it just closed or whatever. Or I wanted to make sure that you had this additional information because they just replaced the roof or blah, 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 blah. Or they've done all this, which sets them apart from the neighborhood. I just wanted to make sure that you took that into consideration because you wouldn't necessarily know about it. Just looking at the MLS listing. Or if you didn't pull the disclosures on this house versus the 4 other ones in the neighborhood that have sold over the last 6 months. I'm just trying to provide you extra information. You know how, like in my Hampstead listing, we did that upgrades and features sheet, right? Because they've encapsulated the crawl space, they've replaced blah, 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 and everything. Send that to the appraiser. It's not just for other buyers. I mean, if you have it already, send it to the appraiser. Hey, I want to make sure you saw this if you didn't see it in MLS. Josh,
Doug, real quick, Doug, I've heard a lot of you guys say that the appraisers never reached out to you as a list agent. And I just wanted to let you know, when we get the engagement letter from the lender, it's got the borrower on it. It's got the point of contact, who we should reach out to set up the inspection. And that's it, right? That's who it's got. The list agent's nowhere on that form ever. The list agent's on the MLS and it's in the contract, right? But most appraisers aren't going to look through that stuff. And that's why you're not getting reached out to as a listing agent, because it's just, there's nothing. A lot of times I'll call the point of contact that they've provided me, and it's the selling agent, and they're like,
I have nothing to do with this.
Why are you calling me?
Yeah.
You should be calling. And I'm like, you're the only number I have.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any other phone number provided to me. I don't have any email address. You're it. That's why I'm reaching out to you. And then they'll take their time and they'll get me a number and a contact for the list agent. But that's why a lot of times you guys aren't reached out to as listing agents is we don't have your info. We don't even know who you are. If it's a refi, obviously there's no agents involved in that, but on a sale, unless they take the time to go through the contract initially to find that out, they're not gonna even think to reach out to you guys. I have learned to do that over the course of my years because I've called too many buyers agents that have said, why are you calling me? You know? But yeah, that's just something, that's why you're maybe not reached out to as much. Sorry, Doug, what else did you have for me?
No, I appreciate that because that was kind of relevant to some of my questions. So you kind of addressed already the appraisal by loan type and saying you guys don't really take that into consideration unless they're asking for specific things. Yeah. Tell me, if a home has things like a solar panel or solar panels or a generator, does that use kind of the same formula with other upgrades about 50%? Or because people ask us this all the time, they're like, oh, should I get solar panels? Is it going to help increase my value? And we're telling them no. So how do you guys look at it?
Yeah, so we just had one a month ago with solar panels. It's the first one we've had with that in our area. And the lender was very specific. If they are leasing the solar panels, no value can be given. They're not theirs. They don't know.
That's a different thing too, if they're paid for or not, if something is paid for or not.
Right. And then you have to look at if they're paid for, and in this case, they were paid for, borrower owned the solar panels. You have to look in your market and see, is there anything in your market that shows any value for solar panel? And in our market, there's nothing. There's nothing in our market that shows that solar panels give you any value at all.
Right.
Because it's very new. There's not many sales that show solar panels. We've got to be able to justify any adjustment we make. And the way you justify is these 3 homes sold with solar panels for X, and these 3 did not, or sold without solar panels for X. And so the difference in what they sold for is the value it gives to the homes. And that's the main way we justify value. Through the cost approach is the other way. And we were not able to find, I did a search of properties in North Carolina, and I went on the MLS and used the solar panel feature as my function. I found 3 sales in North Carolina. So there's no numbers I can use then. And I don't know if it's because agents didn't check it as a checkbox on the MLS sheet when they put it in, or if it's just really that new to the market. You know, there are more than 3 that have sold. But if we don't have the data, we can't justify any adjustment for it. So
even if they sell it as like, hey, this is what like you talked about putting stuff out for the appraiser. If I'm showing you a written justification showing like this is how much you're saving on your electric bill,
it still doesn't necessarily show me that there's value. Value is shown in what a borrower is willing to pay for this feature versus not having this feature.
Right. And so the value is in what you save, not owning it.
Yeah. Value shows in what you're going to be willing to spend for it.
Right.
So that's where we define our numbers is what is your typical buyer willing to spend for this feature versus a home without this feature. And the way we find that is through sales of properties with this feature or elevators. Great example on the island. Great example on the island, right? A house with an elevator, a house without an elevator. Yeah, it depends on how many stops. We value ours per stop. So, right, a typical 2-story beach house is a 3-stop elevator because you have the ground floor, the first floor, the second floor. And we're going at, I think we're at $7,500 a stop. So a 3-stop.
Wow, that's good to know.
5, I think, is what we're going at. So, but a house without it, it's just, I've seen it personally.
If it's just got the shaft, but it doesn't have the elevator, I mean.
Shaft helps a little, but the elevator is the elevator. Right. The shaft is nothing but closets.
Right.
See, exactly. That's what I don't, I guess I don't get. So you would give $7,500 per
stop.
It doesn't matter if that elevator was put in 10 years ago or 2 years ago.
No, doesn't matter. It's got an elevator versus it doesn't is what we're seeing.
Big deal.
So
10 years ago versus 2 years ago, that was going to go more in the condition adjustment on the sales comparison report, right? I mean,
1,000 per year or whatever that you kind of.
yeah. I mean, that's going to go more in that line item.
but that's the
versus
whole condition of the house.
the whole everything wrapped in.
Sure.
Right.
Gotcha.
And that's not the age adjustment was where we go with 1,000 a year, Doug. The condition is more, we take into account upgraded paint, updated flooring, new roof,
HVAC.
elevator that's newer, HVAC, and all that'll wrap in. And conditions can be from a C1 brand new house to a C2. It may be $10,000. It may be $15,000. It all depends on the quality of the condition of the house, right? The style of flooring they used. You may have upgraded your flooring, but you put linoleum down and carpet in the bedrooms. Versus they may have updated their flooring. They put LVP and they put hardwood and they've got tile.
Yeah.
So that's you know, that's what I was getting at too, because I always have people say like, oh, you know, I mean, is it good for us to list those things and the price that they cost? Like, for example,
What they spent
when
on
I
it.
bought my house, the guy was like crazy about the spray foam insulation and how
Right.
awesome it was,
Right.
and that, you know,
Yeah.
it needed to be in there. And we both know there's different types of like LVP quality.
Yes.
So an appraiser, I would think, is not going to look at the and go, oh, that's, you know, 5 mil
Nope.
LVP.
You're not going to be able to tell. You're not going to be able to tell, especially on a house on slab. I mean, if you're on slab, you're rarely going to tell the difference between the thickness of the LVP because you got concrete underneath the thing. They're all going to feel hard. Yeah, price numbers. I don't love numbers on a fact sheet. I don't love that. Like, you know, it cost me, we spent $25,000 to upgrade the master bath and I don't love it. I don't throw that sheet away. I still use it. You know, I want to know what you've done, how long ago it's been done. You know, and certainly the type of material is helpful. There are differences in windows. Just saying I replaced my windows, it's helpful, right? It's helpful. But if you replace your windows with Pella versus, you know, whatever brand, maybe generic brand at Lowe's, there's a difference. And there just is.
Oops, sorry.
You're fine.
What about like maintenance of things, like certain things, like say the elevator, like if you've maintained that elevator every year and got it serviced I don't know how you service elevators, but you know what I mean? Is that a factor?
Not
Things
much.
Like septic, you maintain your septic better than
Not much, because when we go through, a typical appraiser is going to flush the toilets and run the water for a minute or two anyway. And if your septic's not working, we'll be able to know because the toilet's going to gurgle and back up, right? I mean, it's just, but we go in with the, we call them, I think extraordinary assumptions that those things have taken place.
Gotcha.
I mean, we're going into it that you have regularly maintained your home like you should have, unless we visually can see that you haven't. We're not going in as a home inspector, right? We're not putting the tester into the wood to see the level of moisture in it. And, you know, we're not going to that extreme, but we're going to make the assumption when we walk in that you have done your job as a homeowner and you've maintained properly, right? You can see if it's a wood-sided house, if they've not painted and caulked regularly, you can see that because the caulk shrinks, right? And there's a gap between the trim board and the siding. You can tell if a house has been painted regularly because the paint fades. So you can make those assumptions as you walk through and inspect. We don't need to, there's no harm in putting that information, but we also don't want to get a six-page binder of 12-point font on every page of all the things either. Right? Hit the high points for us. Let us know what's been done and what's going on and things that, really bring this value or this home to a higher condition adjustment or quality of construction. That's another one, quality of construction, right? You go into summer house and there are houses that are built at 2 different levels in summer house. There just are. Right? It's a truth. There are houses that are built with higher quality materials and houses that are built with lower quality materials. And so if you know that going into it, let us know, right? I mean, that's part of it.
Well, and that's something you guys would know too. Like you wouldn't necessarily comp a neighborhood to another neighborhood. If you've got like summer house, you're not going to comp it to, like a,
Village at Folkestone.
Or
right.
something like that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, it's never bad to put that in the fact sheet of, hey, just wanted to let you know this property is in one of our premier subdivisions in the area. Here are some of the other premier subdivisions in our area. Because like I said, I go up to an hour, hour and a half away to do appraisals. We have appraisers coming down here from New Bern, from Greenville, from Wilmington, from different markets, Swansboro, and they may not know that, the villages of Holly Ridge or the neighborhoods of Holly Ridge aren't comparable to Summer House. They may not know that. They may, hey, they're both newer subdivisions. They're both in Holly Ridge. Let's use them. And so it wouldn't be a bad idea to throw that in the fact sheet. Hey, this is in this subdivision. Here are some similar subdivisions to it. I had that with an appraisal I had in Wilmington. It was oh my God, the new one on, what is it, right off of Factory. They built those canals in. They're building all. I can't remember.
Oh, you're talking
Helmsport?
No,
Where?
on Factory in Hampstead. Is it Hampstead? I think.
Salted
Haven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee Marina.
Lee Marina. And the guy in there's like, hey, look, just letting you know, this is pretty high quality stuff in here. Pecan Grove would be a good one to use, and here are some others that are good ones to use. And I appreciate that type of stuff. I'm going to use everything in Salters Haven that I can, but if I have to go outside of it, it's good to know the agent thinks these are some good areas to start looking. I'm not proud enough not to look into that and see, right? I mean, I'll check that out, and you know what, you're right. Pecan Grove could be a good place to look for some comps for these that are in Salters Haven. So I think Pecan Grove might be a little bit nicer, but I can make that adjustment on the quality of construction line. But it's better than me going into I can't remember the name of them. It's right across the street near the
Windwater.
Yeah.
I have a question about beach properties. So we sell a lot of properties on the island.
Yep.
They're not easy to comp. They're all different.
Yep.
Some have elevators, some don't. Some have oceanfront, some don't.
How much value are you giving for oceanfront? Like if you're in a neighborhood and it's the exact same house, but one's at the end of the cul-de-sac on the street side, and you got the exact same house that's in the oceanfront, all things being the same, like how much are you adjusting for that oceanfront value?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you.
So there's not a set number.
50 grand, 100 grand.
So you're asking second row versus oceanfront, right? So we look at, there are 4 to 5 neighborhoods on the island. We've got oceanfront, second row, interior. Then you've got Tidal Creek marshfront, and then you've got soundfront, right? And so it's quite, so second row value lots, I'm just going in my head off of recent, are in the 100,000 to 200,000 range, but from memory, and oceanfront are between 5 and 600,000. So there's your value difference.
You're saying oceanfront off the mainland.
No, I'm saying on the island. A lot that's direct oceanfront,
correct,
with a house on it,
correct,
and a lot one row back,
correct,
second row ocean view,
correct.
There is a $300,000 to $400,000 difference in value between those houses. Typically, we try to pull comps if at all possible. You use oceanfront for oceanfront,
right? And
if at all possible, you use North Topsail Beach for North Topsail Beach, and Surf City for Surf City, and Topsail Beach for Topsail Beach. Okay. If you have to use different ones, then you go back to your paired sales and you say, all right, these houses, we'll make the adjustments, we'll break it down. But the North Topsail Beach one, if I'm using it as a comparable to a subject that's in Surf City, I've got to give some to the North Topsail Beach because it's worth less, because most of those are not federally insured. And so the value is significantly less, right, than what a house in Surf City or that one area of North Topsail Beach that is federally insured. I guess it's after that little there's like a little phone station, and then for everything from there towards Surf City is federally insured. Everything other side.
Like Village at Stump Sound, that's not Cobra Zone, and they've got some that are oceanfront and some that are not oceanfront. So, and
I would not use anything in Village that's not oceanfront on the oceanfront. I would go into Surf City and find oceanfront in Surf City. Yeah, and I would go to Topsail Beach and find oceanfront.
Down the whole island.
I do. No,
do you go down the whole island?
I do. I explained into my report to a lender that my neighborhood on Topsail Island for this appraisal is oceanfront homes. It's not anything else. It's oceanfront because that's where the value is. second row is specific to second row, and I'm trying to find second row. We're fine. We're fine. It's not a big.
That's the same way I would run them too. You know, you got to do oceanfront. It's not just about the neighborhood, especially on the island. Josh, let me ask you this question, because I've done this in the past, and maybe it's stupid, but sometimes we get people who are maybe unrealistic about their price, or we just can't comp the damn thing because it's one of those or something like that. And I'll say, hey, let's get an appraisal done before we list, to get an idea of value from an objective third party who has no interest in this. If we did something like that and then used it to base what we list the price on, you know, I would put that at MLS Docs to justify the value. Is that something that an appraiser would look at when they're doing it for a lender? Would they say, hey, you know, they just had it appraised a month ago. Would you take that into consideration? Or would you be like, well, everybody's going to get a different number, so no, I don't care?
No, man. I actually many times have homeowners that say to me, this house was just appraised. You know, I don't know why you're coming out here. We just had it appraised X number of days ago, or weeks ago, months ago. And then they'll say, you want to see it? Yes. Yes, I do. I want to see it, because I might miss something, right? The previous appraiser may have seen something that I don't see. Yeah, Doug, I think it's a good idea to put that in the docs. I don't think there's anything saying you can't, because it wasn't for a lending institution. I mean, it was for the client, as long as the borrower, the seller, as long as they're fine with sharing that information, I think it's fine. There may be some information you want to redact in it that you go through with them. I'm not sure that there necessarily is, though. I don't think there would be anything in there that couldn't be public knowledge and shared. And as an appraiser, knowing it's in there is helpful too, because not every appraiser pulls the docs and looks and sees what's attached to the MLS file. I know that's something we're hitting on with our trainees now is, hey, look, don't just pull the MLS card. Take the next step, you know, pull the docs, see what they've got attached, and there's some information there. So yeah, I think that's fine, and letting them know it's there is fine. I think it'll help get a basis of value, and it you know, it's information's not a bad thing for appraisers. We tend to like information.
Well, and that's the expectation we have to set too. Even though we do it and then we used it based on that, it doesn't mean somebody else is going to have the same opinion of value. So it's just to get us in the ballpark. It's not the gospel. Here, let me ask you a follow-up kind of question of that too, because I've been told this by lenders. If someone has an appraisal for a refi, it's not, those usually come in higher because the bank already has the loan than a purchase. What's your take on that?
Good question.
Doug, I don't take any different step in a refi versus an appraisal for a loan, for a sale. There is no steps that I do in my process that's any different, with the exception, obviously, a sale has a contract I've got to go through. I will say that some appraisers, I see this in the forum, they see that number in the contract, and then the number gets stuck in their head, you know, and they're looking to appraise
at that
based on that number. That's like a holy grail.
So that's kind of a good question. Why even is that part of the equation?
Yeah, good question. Why do you have to see the contract?
That has to go. That has to go to a higher person than me.
Right. I understand where you're coming from.
Right. But we have to put that information in the form, right? That's on the appraisal. It says, you know, tell me about the contract. What's the sale price, the sale date, any concessions that are being made, and you know, tell me a little bit about it. So we you know,
isn't market value what a ready, willing, and able buyer
willing to pay?
Yeah. Market value is what a willing buyer is willing to pay for the house on that date. Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. So it is and it's not, because that isn't a sell. I mean, it hasn't gone through. I mean, it's part of it, but it's not. We're going off of closed comps.
But if you're $2,000 off, does that come into play? Yes.
We try not to be $2,000 off on it, because
that's just shitty.
Well, what we say in our side of it is,
that's a good answer.
Yeah. Well, what we try to say in our side of it is we're not that good, right? We're pretty good, but we're not that good in a $250,000 deal to know that it's 248,000. We're not that good, right? We're pretty good, but are we really going to think that we're so good that we've hit it to the number at 248,000 and we're going to have that fall?
No, oh my God.
Yeah. That's bullshit. Well, and I guess it's I will speak off of what I see as the majority of the appraiser's opinion is we're not that good. And if when I'm doing my appraisal and I come in at 249,500 on a $250,000 sale,
you're bumping it up to 250.
Well, the value of that is 250,000. Yeah. It just is. If it comes in at 248, the value is 250.
And that's a really nice fence. That's, you know.
Well, but it's also maybe my time adjustment was off by 0.5%, or maybe my bath adjustment was off by just a little. You know, I mean, I can't say that I'm such a perfect appraiser that I'm going to cause this deal to completely fall through over $2,000 or $500 or $1,000. It's ridiculous to believe you are. However, some appraisers are so analytic. This is the number I came up with, so this is the number it is, and you're not going to sway them. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah, they're looking at numbers, not as people.
Though, like when you're 30 grand off,
or
more. In your case, was it in Newbern?
60. 66.
Jesus.
Yeah. So like
when I in the times where I am way off.
Yeah.
A lot of times my first step is to call the agent.
Yeah.
Why? What am I missing?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What am I missing? There's something that I'm missing because I'm nowhere near where you're near.
Right.
And you know what? Yeah. How'd you get the number? What comps did you use to come up with? Because we assume you guys have pulled sales to come up with an idea to list of that. And how did you get here? Because I want to see if I'm wrong.
She would not leave the neighborhood. And our number one comp, our house was built in 1985. Our number one comp was built in 1910. And our adjustment was $2,000.
What?
Yeah, that's
and there was no upgrades from like
that's just a bad appraisal. And that happened.
It was terrible.
And that happened. But typically a lender will order another appraisal, and that's in that
it was FHA.
Well, because it stays with the property. Yeah.
All right. So let me ask one more question, and maybe this is a good one to wrap up on. And this is just kind of a curious thing. How were drive-by appraisals being done when COVID first started? And is that being done anymore?
You're gonna like this. Yeah, so I didn't do many drive-bys. I want to go in the house, right? She's actually a real estate agent in this area. I did an appraisal for an agent in this area for her personal house, probably been 10 years ago. And I inspected the interior, and she kept trying to keep me from going in a room. Anytime I would go that way, she would direct me somewhere else. And so finally I just said, look, I gotta inspect this bedroom. Let me get in there and see. Well, her boys had been playing with matches and had burnt the carpet and the walls. The sheetrock was down. I mean, the condition of that room was significantly damaged compared to the rest of the house. And that plays into that appraisal. I mean, the house condition now goes from, C3 of a pretty good to, a low C4 of average to below average, because you've got, burned carpet and fire damage in the upstairs bedroom.
How would you not fix that?
If you just do a drive-by, you never know that.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Just doing a drive-by, you don't know that. The other thing on drive-bys that I hate, and I'm a builder, so I like to measure every that I appraise. I like to pull a tape measure on every corner of every house so I know the square footage. Right? Tax records are terrible. The square footage on tax records are, if it's single story, they're usually pretty close. But even then, some of the olders have converted a garage into living space. And so I like to pull it. Anyway, drive-bys during COVID, I try not to do them, but we did plenty of them. And you have to state in there that you're making an extraordinary assumption that the house is what the tax records and the MLS sheets say it is. And you go off of that. I will say it's very similar to comparables. We don't enter the comparable properties. We take the MLS sheet and the tax records word for what the comparable is. Now, you guys do a great job of putting photographs up, and we feel like we have a lot of times walked through that property because the photographs just take us on such a good walkthrough. We get the condition of the property, although there are some where they literally just put the front view and that's it. So I don't like them, but I got a report the other day, Doug. My sister works at the office and she has accepted it, and I thought it was a review. She's only been accepting appraisals for us for the last year, so she's learning everything as well. And she called me and she said, "Hey, I got a desktop review for you." That's where I review another appraiser's work. Pretty easy. I said, "Yeah, I'll do it, not a problem." I knew it would take me an hour, 2 hours at most. So I left it for the day before it was due. I shouldn't have, but I did. I had others that were more pressing. I sit down to it, and it's not a desktop review. It's just through CoreLogic, and it's a desktop valuation through a loan with Bank of America. I didn't leave my desk to appraise that property. They had provided sales. They had provided a list of 20 sales. They had provided photographs. They had provided the information on the subject property, and all I had to do was go through and click buttons. I didn't even open my appraisal software. They had the forms and the software they wanted on within their portal. I clicked a link, it opened that up, and that's how I did that appraisal. I opened up the tax card. The tax card, it was a Onslow County property. The tax card said the property was 1,750 square foot. The MLS sheet said the property was 1,900 square foot. I'm sorry, the CRS form said it was 1,750, which would go through the MLS to get that CRS data sheet. It said 1,750. The MLS sheet on it had 1,900. The Onslow County tax card had 2,600 square foot for heated square foot, not total, heated. So I've got three different numbers, and they're quite a bit apart from each other on the square footage of the property. So then I go through and I start looking at the photographs on the MLS, and it's a 1.5 story. It's a 1 story with a frog over the garage. Look at the sketch, can see the garage is 20 foot wide. So in my brain, I know that the frog's probably 14 foot wide by the length of the garage. So I could come up with, tax card showed 1,500 square foot on the first floor, but it had it as a 2-story. That's why I had come up with that funky 2,600. So anyway, we met in the middle at 17 something on the square footage, but I don't know if that's accurate because I did it from my desk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think it's the way it's going though. Unfortunately, I think it's going that way more. I think the big lending companies think they can get these done less expensive. And so as appraisers, we're not allowed to talk about fee very much amongst ourselves, but we're trying to encourage each other to charge the same for these desktop valuations that we charge to go inspect a property and perform a 1004 on a property, because we feel like if we can charge the same money for it, the lender hopefully will have enough common sense to say, if we're going to pay the same thing, we want you to go out, step foot on the property.
They provided your comps and everything.
They provided a list of sales, 20 sales. Wow. And of that list of sales, they wanted me to choose comps.
So isn't that almost like the same thing as we need this house to appraise for?
It could be looked at that way.
We're doing your job for you, just fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Right. On that
use
one,
our system.
That's what they want. On that one, I do a comp search anyway. I pull my comp search because I want to see if there's something that they've missed that I can find. Well, and it's also my report with my name on it.
Right?
At the end of the day, it comes back on.
It just sounds like blurred lines. Like
but I think that's the way that lending companies are hoping to go.
It sounds like fines are coming.
Well, I think at the end of the day, what do they want? They want deals to happen. And so if they can, but yeah, so Doug, I don't like them. I don't like drive-bys. I don't like desktop valuations. I'll do a drive-by. I will, money, right? But I don't like it. I don't like them. I don't feel as comfortable doing them as I feel. But you guys help with those tremendously. The more information you put on the MLS sheets,
the measurements,
the better it is for us as appraisers, because it is it's going that way. There are more and more requests of that nature, and the more information that's at our fingertips, the better off the assignment's going to be at the end of the day, you know.
Okay. That sounds great to me. Anybody have anything else? Josh, we really appreciate you coming today. And I think this has been,
no, seriously.
I'm sure that, I mean, these guys would pick your brain all day. I mean, they probably like to call this if they get the reference when they can, but we really do appreciate this. Having this insight is, you know, what we do for our clients is try to set expectations because we don't have the ultimate answer. So having this insight helps us set expectations just a little bit better. And that's all we're trying to do is improve.
It helps on our end as well, Doug. And I appreciate you guys being willing to have this and do this and ask the questions. And it helps on our end as well. I mean, to know I can reach out to local agents to find things out to help me do a better job is extremely beneficial. And, you know, while our company does do building appraisals and real estate, we don't do a lot in the real estate side and we never have. So knowing that if someone were to come to me and say, hey, can you recommend, you know, to know that you guys put this amount of work into the job you do, yeah, it helps you tremendously on that side. I would have no problem saying, hey, go see the Oceanaire, go see Doug, go see his agents. They can take care of you from, you know, any part of the state you're in. They've got somebody that can help you out. So I appreciate that on my end of it. Hey, I'd love to do it again sometime. You know, I think,
yeah, absolutely.
I think this could be something that could grow into something helpful for both industries, our end and your end as well. And, you know, I think next time, if available, I might bring a few of the trainees that we have along as well, so they can sit in on and hear and learn, because I think it could be a valuable experience for them.
Well, it's good insight for your perspective too, to kind of see, you know, how we approach things, and the more overlap that we can have in our approach, the better we'll get at coming to the same number, right? Which will ultimately make it better for our clients. So I appreciate that. And of course, the topic's always going to evolve because the markets change and things change. So I think it will be good for us to touch base, you know, a couple times a year to do this. Yeah, man. I appreciate your willingness. Thank you so much. It really does mean a lot, and we really appreciate it.
Hey, and you've got my contact information, Nate. I know you've got it as well. I don't mind one bit. If you guys ever have a question or anything, send me a text, shoot me an email, give me a call. If I can help out at all with it, I certainly will. May not be able to get back to you right away, but as quick as I can, I'll get back to you. And if I don't have an answer, I'll help find one. But, you know, we're all in it together, right? I mean, we're all in it together, and there's no reason to fight each other in it. It's if I can help you and you can help me, I know it's beneficial at the end of the day. So yeah, I appreciate you guys giving me the time to come in here and talk for a little while.
Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it.
All right, guys, now time to go inspect some properties. Thanks.
There you go.
You guys, do you have anything else before?
Thank you so much. That was great.
Tree stumps for FHA. Do they have to be like ground level, just not sticking up? Do they have to be out?
That's preferred as ground level, just not sticking up is what's preferred with appraising. Now again, everything.
I'm sorry, I know you were leaving.
No, it's fine. Everything is going to come down to the specific appraiser. I mean, there could be some guy that's just a stick in the mud that says, no, it's a tree stump still because I can see it. But, you know, I mean.
What if you just build a fireplace on it?
Well, that's what they were going to do. They were like, oh, that's our fire pit. Well, he said it's a trip hazard in the back corner of your backyard. So
yeah, if it's level with the ground, it's not a trip hazard. It can't be. Can't be.
Like it's an extra $150.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one legit was sticking up, but there were others that were level that were bigger. And our question was, and I couldn't call the appraiser, was how much of this do we have to get out of the ground?
Yeah.
So we just got it all out of the ground.
Right. I mean, typically if it's ground down, level with the ground, it should be fine. You know, there are appraisers that are just in it for money. And so if we call that, we get to go back out and charge another trip fee. Right. I mean, and there are appraisers that are just going to do that.
So another question off of that. So say we remove said stump and the stump is laying on the ground beside the fence.
Just move it, Felicia.
Are you going to call that out? Like does the debris need to be removed?
I wouldn't think so. I don't
because
think that's
someone's had trash called out.
That was me.
Trash?
Trash.
Yes,
what the hell?
That too.
Yep.
On an FHA, you had what was
mine was a VA.
What was explain trash to me?
There was trash bags outside the trash cans that were going to be picked up.
Oh God, like on the street.
I was on the side of the house. They had like put it out.
What does it have to do with an appraiser though? I don't understand.
So she was like, we want to burn the stumps later. Can we leave them here? I was like, no, haul them off because I don't want him to say these have to be removed.
Again, you can't speak for everybody, and there's always going to be that story. You know what I mean? There's always going to be that story of that appraiser that was just this, and that's that story. You know what I mean? That's that story.
Right, but if we know generally like the guideline, it's to be ground level.
Yeah,
then,
okay, does it need to be a trip hazard, right?
Okay.
Right. If it's 1.5 inches up, it is a trip hazard.
Right. And because we don't know what we don't know, so I was like, well, just take them out because I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Typically, and typically on that, the trip hazard needs to be in an area of activity.
So say lots of walking in the back side of the fence.
We were in the back corner.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I had a hole and people had to fill it in.
It was called out. We had to fix it. I didn't know exactly how we needed to fix it, so we just took it out. So I mean, it is.
Well, that's the best way. If you don't know how, just remove the whole problem. Right. But typically, if it's ground level or below, it's not a trip hazard, and that's your typical answer for that. Is, you know, I can't see how it would be called out as anything else. You know, go get a couple of bags of mulch from Lowe's, pour it over it, take a potted plant, sit in there, and it's a flower bed down there, and there's no there, right? You've covered the problem, and there's no tree stumps, just a couple bags of mulch.
So if you were if they were to go in and just build their fire pit around that, and then when the appraiser comes back out and all of a sudden it's fire pit, would that be okay?
I'm not going to dig in a fire pit and look and see what's at the bottom of it. Right? If I walk in a backyard and there are some stones stacked and a couple of logs in it.
Sure.
It's a fire pit.
It's a fire pit, right?
It's a fire pit. I don't know any, again.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And I don't know many that are
that's my favorite saying.
That work that hard, right? And that's a lot of work.
They're trying hard.
Right. Again, it just hit with a couple of bags of mulch and a little border and a plant, and it's a flower bed. And I'm not walking through somebody's flower bed to see if it really is written, right? It's a flower bed. It's a flower bed.
Yeah.
So, but you know, the answer is it a trip hazard? Yeah, if it's sticking up above grade, it's a trip hazard, and it is their job to call that out. Would every appraiser call that out? No. Some appraisers aren't calling that out because it's also normal in our market with houses that have 17 pine trees in the yard to have some tree stumps in the yard in the back corners, and they're not a big deal. So yeah, I mean, I guess that comes down to each appraiser's
and that's opinion. Fine. Like a guideline is a guideline. I just need to know how to tell my clients to fix it.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Anything else? Hey, you think of something, send it to me, right? You think of something, you got a burning question, you got something you just want to get answered, send it to me, right? I don't mind. I'll respond and get it taken care of. Doug, what about on your end, Brandon?
Yeah, I'll share Josh's info with the group just so you guys have it as a resource. And you know, he said please reach out if you have questions. So you guys need to take him up.
Yeah, you may regret that.
I won't.
We're gonna be blown up.
He'd be like, "Damn it, I'm gonna block all these numbers."
His phone's gonna explode.
Yeah, block number.
All right. Well, thanks again, Josh. We do really appreciate the time, and I mean, it's been almost 2 hours, so a ton of great information. This is our longest best practices meeting of all time. So you're a record setter, and people were engaged, and they weren't just like bored and waiting for me to hang up. So thank you so much.
I've enjoyed it as well, and again, I appreciate you doing it. It shows that it just shows the level of professionalism you guys have in the industry you're in, and you know what? It's good to know that we've got some good, solid professionals right around us in the market. So thank you guys. Thanks for having me. Doug, Brandon, thank you guys. You guys have a great your week and a good holiday season. All right.
Thanks.
Guys, I'm out of here.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, not a problem.
Have a good day.
It is mine.
Bye.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Hey, let's get a face.
I mean, go for it.
Y'all have a good holiday season, guys. Thank you.
They're gone.